Welcome to the Golden Pathways Zoom seminar, where we study the teachings of the Ascended Masters and make a transition from the 7 major world religions into the teachings of those Ascended Masters. We've been doing this now for over 10 years, first by phone, then by Zoom. And we have covered topics as diverse as pathways to inner peace, increasing your light in the world, refreshing your psychology from an Ascended Master perspective, healing relationships, lavish abundance, and climbing the mystical path. Our theme this year is embodying your sainthood. So we are stepping it up a little bit this year and trying to get people to practice sainthood behaviors. We'd like to welcome you today to a topic entitled The Return of Atlantis, Lessons for America Today, based on the book A Dweller on Two Planets, brought to us by Reverend Valerie McBride. And I'll tell you a little bit more about her in a moment. So the profound spiritual journey of Phylos the Tibetan, as revealed in the book A Dweller on Two Planets, shares some of his karmic records, especially those on Atlantis. Some people believe that those of us living in America today are reincarnated Atlanteans come here to get unfinished lessons of that ancient civilization. What then led to the downfall of such an advanced society? Which moral and spiritual lessons were left unlearned? In this presentation, we will explore the universal law of karma and how it has been understood across various spiritual traditions. Most importantly, we will reflect on what these teachings mean for us today. If humanity is repeating old patterns, what wisdom can guide us to make better choices this time? So we're going to look at Phylos' story and invite each of us to reflect more deeply on our personal responsibility, expanded consciousness, and our shared group consciousness. Karma, shared group karma. And we'll be led by our previous president of the Church Universal and Triumphant, Valerie McBride, who has a Master's of Science in Leadership and a doctorate in education specializing in brain research. She studied Brain Smart. She's a Montessori teacher, a trainer, an administrator, and an accomplished speaker, media representative, and educational consultant. She's a longtime member of the Summit Lighthouse and presenter on the Ascended Master topics through Summit University and the Summit Lighthouse. Her mission statement says, discover your inner divinity and reconnect to your higher self. Welcome, Valerie. We're happy to have you with us to help us reconnect with our higher selves.
Thank you very much, Patricia. And it's nice to see all of you. I think I know most of you that are here online. And I have just a great presentation here for you because we have some new advances, thanks to our technology with Phylos the Tibetan, that you are going to be the first to witness and see. So let me tell you a little bit about the background first. This whole series was originally done by our messenger, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, our guru. And she did this in the 1990s, I would say the mid-1990s, a whole series on Phylos the Tibetan. And it was a Summit University. So this is all Summit University material. And then what happened was I had the great opportunity and was asked by the leadership at the ranch to create a curriculum that others could teach on this whole series. So it went from Summit University to the Essentials program. So those of you that are familiar with the Essentials program, now this is actually a piece of it. So this beautiful background that you see in the background here was created by our wonderful graphic designer at the ranch, Alexandra Martins. And she created also the image that you will see of Zalem. Zalem is the reincarnated, the Phylos, the Tibetan, who was his advanced name as the master. But when he lived on Atlantis, he was known as Zalem. And so you're going to hear a lot of names that are Atlantean names. And you're going to hear a lot about the Atlantean inventions, which are amazing because many of them are now here right here in our environment that I'll show them to you as he described them. And then maybe you can even figure out what they are. I'm kind of interested to see if that hat that Elizabeth had on was one of those inventions from Atlantis. It probably was, because almost everything else that he talks about in the book, we are using today. It might have been described a little bit differently, but it's just incredible, absolutely incredible. So this is the story, and I feel great honor on behalf of Phylos the Tibetan and his twin flame Virus to be able to deliver this to you today. It is so big on my heart. I feel very close and connected to Phylos and the whole Atlantean karma that many of us lived on Atlantis and have come back, and now we're here. And you look around and you are going, oh my goodness, we're so close to what happened to Atlantis. Will we survive all of this? Will we get through it? And by the violet flame, by God's mercy, we will. So let's go ahead. Are you ready to get started? Let's go ahead and get going.
Yes.
Okay. So here we go. Just bear with me as we start this. I also did embed some of the teachings that Mother gave to us on this. I thought you would really enjoy it. I did have to reduce them down to about 2 minutes apiece. If you listen to the whole course, it's very, very lengthy, and I was able to listen to every single teaching that was given by Mother, and then I was able to take out those salient points. Now, what I want to show you about this particular picture is, again, created by our graphic designer at the ranch, Alexander Martins. And you'll see on the left, this is actually a picture, an image of Phylos the Tibetan, and it is in the book. On the right, you will see an image of the what Atlantis looked like. The Kaifa was the main city, and this was actually drawn by Tom Miller, one of our Keepers of the Flame communicants, longtime members, amazing, amazing artist. But more than anything, I wanted to show you was, if you look in the middle on the bottom, you'll see a little graph, it looks like, with a couple little dots in it with a circle. That is the Atlantean signature of Phylos the Tibetan. So that's how they used to write in those days. So now we'll go on to the next slide, and I'll just tell you a little bit quickly about, you can get this book, The Dweller on Two Planets, received by Frederick S. Oliver. He was only 17 years old when this was given to him in 1883, if you can believe it. So he was the amanuensis, or that's known as the secretary, and he received all of this information. He lived near Mount Shasta, and the book was finally published in 1898, and you can receive this. You can get a free copy of this if you go to archive.org or sacredtext.com as well. Now, there's a lot of topics that Mother talked about in her whole Summit University series. And these are some of them. There are so many. I mean, it's just, she had a plethora of teachings, amazing. So the worship of the sun god, Atlanteans' parallels to Plato's philosopher king, legends of the lost continent of Atlantis, the science and religion of Atlantis, the nature of the vow, the worship of the sun god, Jesus Christ, avatar of the ages, the lost court of prophecy, and curing crimes on Atlantis. Oh, that's a really interesting one, but you have to take the class to find out about how they did it. Okay, then karmic responsibilities and healing, becoming the master of your life, the karma of Atlantis, revisited. The Saudis attacked the Swearnis and the karma of ignorance, the role of woman on Atlantis, the incarnations of Phylos, the serious connection in the golden age of Jesus Christ on Atlantis. That's all embedded in the 24 lessons that I created afterwards. And that was this whole series that you see right here. So again, I say I had great honor to be able to do this. This was my volunteer time, my mission to God at this particular time. I did this a couple of years ago and created 24 lessons, of which are now available for anybody to teach that feels impelled to teach this incredible course. So a little bit about Atlantis, if you want to know where it's at. This is taken from the book W. Scott Elliott's Map of Atlantis, before its final sinking. And it was about in the middle, right between, it's in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, as you can see, kind of between United States and Europe. So that's about where it's located. And then again, going back to that incredible picture that was a painting that was actually done by Tom Miller of Atlantis. And this is pretty close to what it looked like, because in the book, he described, this is Kaifu. Kaifu was the capital. And so it says, at no point did Kaifu approach the ocean nearer than 5 miles, though it had no walls around the whole city, extended a huge moat 3/4 of a mile broad by an average of 60 feet in depth and supplied by the waters of the Atlantic. On the north side, a great canal entered the moat, a canal in which the outflowing waters of a large river, the Nomes, created an outgoing current of considerable swiftness. So that he goes into everything is a detail. There is so much detail in this book, and it was also written in the 1800s, so it has the Old English. So we have tried to kind of recapture a lot of what he said and put it into more of a modern terminology from the book, because a lot of people have a hard time understanding that. Okay, and then from there, we also learned about the night side force. They were able to draw electrical energies from the waves against the ocean shores and the rise and the fall of the tides, the mountains and the torrents, and also what they termed as the night side of nature. So it's considered the force and nature of gravitation and of the sun. And so here you see the picture that came right from the book of the Valix. The Valix is their flying machines. They go up in the air. They're run by solar energy. They go into the water. They do all kinds of amazing things. Now, I just want to stop right here and tell you that you may remember that Saint Germain talked about in his book on alchemy about a natural law. And he called it, this is one of the laws. We have many, many, many laws by the Ascended Masters. One of them is called cohesion, adhesion, and magnetism. And this is how Jesus was able to also walk in water. So I believe, and I did put this into the notes in the class, that this may be a part of this particular ability of alchemy, of what they used back then to be able to, this night side force is what they called it. Okay, now moving on. This is the little surprise that I have for you. After creating all the lessons, and we've had many teachers teach these lessons throughout the years, and we still have, I think Bridget is teaching this course right now. We also have a lady up in Sweden who is also teaching the course and putting it on YouTube in Swedish. So these two courses are being taught right now. But this is the little surprise I wanted to show you ahead of its time, ahead of its release, official release. And that is, I felt very called that this needed to go a step further. And in that step, it needed to be something that was appealing to younger people, the younger generation, that somehow we could capture that younger generation. So I'm working with a small team, including my husband, and we are creating this along with Simone Gurdy, who has done an incredible job in helping me with this and doing most of the video. And also Fred Marcel, whose voice you may recognize in this, who did the voiceover. By the way, I'm just hearing some background noises, and I'm just wondering if, whatever it may be, if we could maybe mute that. Thank you very much. Okay, so here is the first release of a video that gives you an understanding of the power of motion picture, I should say. So here we go.
I am Phylos the Tibetan. I am an ascended master who once walked the battleground of Earth. So many today realize that ordinary knowledge is not enough. They are searching for the real light of the Christ within, the deeper truths their souls remember from ancient times. I share my own true story. Words have no power to depict the utter misery which the exact nature of the punishment has caused me. If but one soul shall be saved such misery, and similar or equal sin, or less or more error, then am I content. I have sought to explain the great mystery of life, illustrating it with part of my own life history. Extracts which cover the glorious rise and devastating fall of Atlantis. The unbreakable laws of karma, the heavy cost of wrongdoing, and the path of making it right. Truths I bore witness to in my book, A Dweller on Two Planets. These records are real, and they point to so much more. My words matter urgently now, because I have looked upon America and wept, seeing the same ancient pitfalls in the collective karma of those of us who are reincarnated Atlanteans. We have returned here to balance those old records, pay off every last debt, and hopefully master those ancient momentums, this time through greater light and greater joy, instead of greater suffering. So, come closer, beloved, let the story speak for itself, and journey with me as it all begins.
So that was the voiceover on that was our wonderful Fred Marcel, who is also a well-known actor and very good at voicing. And so that was created again by Simone Gertie, and we worked on it very hard. This was the actual dictation that was given word for word by Phylos the Tibetan through the messenger. So we're going to go to the next section here, and you're going to get just another little glimpse. I'm not going to show you everything because these are all little teasers for you and for the world to come as we release these. These are in this size because they will go on a cell phone. So a younger generation, 64% of them watch most of their content and their social media content right from a cell phone. So that's why it's in the particular way it's created here. It's not the full picture. It's meant to go on a cell phone. You're meant to look at it and watch it. Again, this is meant to be created for a younger generation that we're hoping that we can reach through a different means rather than going through a regular means as a class. But it will have a class that we promote, a smaller condensed class that will be able to bring about hopefully many people who would like to register for this and learn more about Atlantis and the story of Phylos. So what happens next? So we just heard the beginning part, and now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Phylos, who is Zalem, the young man Zalem. He was a mountain boy, a poor mountain boy, and he had a dream of going to the university. There were several universities throughout Atlantis, and it was well known that you would go to a university. He did not have the money, and so he petitioned his god Inkle that he would be able to go to a university. And so we're going to first hear about or see this particular scene of him going up the mountain. This is the very opening scene in the book, and then it leaves you hanging. It's a cliffhanger because it's going to be continued to another one. And then we're going to hear from Mother about this particular scene and why this is so important. So here we go.
I kept climbing higher and higher up the towering mountain. I was almost at the very top now. Dawn was coming soon, and I had to reach the highest rock in time to greet Inkal, the sun, as he rose. If I wasn't there, Inkal, the greatest visible sign of the one true God, might not look kindly on my prayer. No, he had to see that I, a young man climbing up this trackless steep mountain, was willing to do anything to do him honor. That's the only reason I had come alone into this empty, silent place and struggled up the steep, pathless slope covered in snow, under the vast, starry sky. I ask myself, could there be any belief more beautiful than the one my people hold? Don't all of us in Poseidon worship the one true God, the only real God, whose symbol is the blazing sun? Nothing could be more sacred or holy than this. As the first beam of sunlight rose over the horizon and pierced the total darkness of night, I threw myself flat on the snowy peak. I had to stay there until the sun god completely defeated the god of darkness. Finally, when the sun won, I stood up, bowed deeply one last time, and started back down the terrifying slope of ice, snow, and bare rock. The black rocks were sharp and jagged, sticking up through the ice like the mountain's ribs. This was one of the world's greatest peaks, rising 13,000 feet above sea level. For 2 days, all my efforts had been to reach that frigid summit and cast myself, a living offering, on its majestic altar, thus to honor my God. I wondered if he had heard and noted me. If he had, did he care? Did he care enough to tell his second in command, the mountain god, to help me? I stared at the mountain god without knowing why, foolishly hoping he would show me some kind of treasure or... What's that dull metal glint in the rock? My ice-tipped walking stick had scraped the stone bare, and now the morning sun lit it up. Gold! Oh, Incal! It is so! Yellow, precious gold! Oh, Incal! I cried, repeating his name. Be thou praised for returning answers so quickly to thy humble petitioner. Down in the snow, I knelt out of gratitude to the God of all beings, the Most High, whose shield the sun poured forth his glorious rays. Then I looked again on the treasure. What a store of wealth was there. As I hammered the quartz rock with excited blows, it shattered, but the gold running through it was so thick, it held the pieces together. Oh, Incal, I cried. You are good to your child, giving me this treasure so freely. Now I can make my dream come true before hope fades from waiting too long. I stuffed my deep pockets with as much as I could carry.
I think that we have all seen that many times the answer that God had for us was there all the while, but we didn't see it until we asked. There's a further lesson to be gleaned from Zalem's call, and the answer forthcoming from Incal his god, who revealed to him the gold in the mountain. By discovering the gold, Zalem received the money he needed to pursue his education. But God also set up the circumstances of Zalem's life, whereby his metal, the gold of his character, would be tested, and his soul would eventually learn the lessons it needed to learn, as we will see as the story progresses. So when we ask God for something and he gives us something, we have to remember the rule. God has a right to test us. He may give the gift, but he may also give a test with it. And Zalem was tested during the remainder of his life. He passed some tests, he failed some tests. What is important to know is that God will test us. We have a right to be tested. He has a right to test us. So God, once having opened himself to us in answer to our call, then enters our life because he has expended something of himself on our behalf. And he wants to see that we will understand that and rise to the occasion of giving in kind. It works both ways. With what measure God answers us, we must meet him, at least equal, and give back to him that equal and more. Don't the parables of Jesus tell us that when God gives an amount to us, he expects it returned with interest, and how he punishes the one who went and buried his portion in the earth in a napkin?
So Zalem had many tests after that. And before we go on to the next section, I just want to show you here another image from the book, the Maxim light deposited by Jesus Christ, that was deposited actually in Atlantis. Now let's hear some more about that.
We return now to Zalem's embodiment on Atlantis. By his striving for excellence in his studies and career, he wins the affection of Prince Menax, who has lost his wife and son. Menax and Zalem are like two halves missing their other half who come together to make a whole. This shows a positive good karma that Zalem has. In the first instance, he has a direct relationship to God the Father. He goes to that source for the direction of his life. He prays for the means to go to school. He discovers the load of gold, which he then uses to pay for his education. Now, in this instance, he wins the favor and love of one of the highest and best father figures in the story, Prince Menax himself, perhaps second only to the Rai Wallern, who is the emperor of Atlantis. So another part of the equation of Zalem's psychology is that along with a good father figure in Menax, he will also have to deal with a bad father figure in the form of the adept and high priest Menon. Menon belongs to the order of high initiates, which we've been told about. It's called the Sons of the Solitude. They have extensive training for many years, and they are a brotherhood of adepts that have occult powers beyond all imagination. So this high priest is the head of the temple, the main temple of Atlantis in Kaifu, where all of the people of Atlantis come, and there is still in that temple at this point in the story the existence of the unfed flame. And that unfed flame burns there, and it was deposited on Atlantis by Jesus Christ when he descended to earth in a brief period to deliver to them the tablets of the law and this unfed flame. So this high priest Menon, who is in reality a black magician, is the tender of that flame and the ruler of the temple. So Atlantis, of course, is in very serious trouble because of his presence there. As the story progresses, Menon is revealed as a betrayer who is instrumental in Zalem's death.
So we'll get back to Menon a little bit later here, but I want to show you this beautiful rendition of Zalem that was created again by Alexander Martins for us, of which we used for our video series. But I want to also tell you that now as the book progresses, he has done very well. He went to the university, he graduated, he's moved up in the world, and he has great ambitions. Again, this is part of the karma that he also bears, is his ambition to rise higher. So he was actually adopted, and he was adopted by the brother of the Rai, and who also had a daughter that was now his adopted sister. But it was actually his twin flame, Anzumi. And he asked himself in the book, and this is also where he makes karma, ought I to feel pleasure or vexation? I looked at her whom I had dreamed of as my wife, in case Inkle in his goodness should see fit to grant me exaltation to high places. So again, he already has his eye on her, even though she is officially the adopted type of a sister. Okay, so moving on here to our next slide, just a little bit more about from our messenger, Guru Ma, on this.
I would like to summarize for you the beginning of chapter 10. In this chapter, Prince Menax, who is the premier and the Rai's chief advisor, offers Zalem in his 4th year of schooling the position of Secretary of Records. This position would bring him in close contact with the Rai and all of the princes. Menax reveals that he has followed Zalem's student career and has been behind many opportunities that Zalem has received in his studies. Menax asks Zalem to go on a mission into a far country during his upcoming vacation from school. Zalem agrees and provides a prologue to the account of his journey. by describing Necropan, which is Egypt, as well as the land he will visit, that of the Swernes, now called Hindustan. These were the most civilized nations not under the rule of Atlantis at the time of our story.
So this is the journey that he goes on. So he leaves Atlantis, as you can see in the middle there. He goes eastward over the Pacific Ocean and then over to what we now is North America, but it was much different back then. The continents were differently formed. He goes to an area near Arizona, then on up to the Tetons, and then over a little bit north into the Detroit area. Now, the reason I know that is because of his descriptions and the way he talks about them. He explains that he journeys to the Lake Superior area. He didn't call it Lake Superior, but there were Atlantean copper mines that were there. And also he visited some of the colonial lands that are now on the coast of Maine. So this was quite a trip for him. And here he is. Here's the beautiful Tetons. He says, this is what it says from the book. From there, they crossed over the great salt lakes and then went to the three lofty peaks covering the snow. Zalem explains that on the tallest of these had stood, perhaps for 5 centuries, a building made of heavy slabs of granite. It had originally been erected for a double purpose of worship of Incal and astronomical calculations, but was used in his day as a monastery. There was no path up to the peak, and the sole means of access was by Valix. So then he went on up on his Valix to the very top, and he explains it. Now we also know that this is an ancient focus of the great light of the 7 rays of the Elohim and the archangels that are enshrined there. But here's what is so amazing. As I was doing the research on this, and this is where I really felt the presence of Phylos, I thought, I'm just going to go and see if there are any historical remains up there. And so I did a lot of research and I came up on some images of some stones and slabs that were at the top of these peaks. And it explains that these were put there by North Americans, native North Americans. So here's what they look like. Now, tell me, how can native North Americans get all the way up there and put those slabs up there? So I believe that this may have been part of the original monastery that he visited when he went up there with his Valix. Now, I'll talk a little bit about some of the inventions then. I'm going to go through this really quickly. He talks about this, metallic chords resembling those of a piano. I thought it looks somewhat like a semiconductor. He talks about having these voices, an inflection of voices, and being able to speak using this night side technology. So this could have been Bluetooth. We don't know, but perhaps it could have been. We go on to the next one. He talks about the Valix transportation. It's kind of like a modern cab. And you could just like call on the telephone, but it wasn't a telephone, it was something else, and you would get your service. He talked about a telephonic service, which they called NAME back then. He talked about a clairvoyant instrument, which later would save fuel, energy to be converted into heat for cooking and other purposes. It could have been perhaps what we know as a microwave today. He also talked about the power of sound and the rays of many-hued lights, brilliant, exhausted air tubes and colors that changed as the notes did. For every ray of light, whatever it was source, was a pulsing choral note. And he says, thus the stars sang. There were a lot more in the book, but those are just a few of them. I'll show you just a couple more. Mother had talked about the Necropan and the Swernes being an advanced group of people that used certain powers. Some of them were used rightfully, but most of them were not used rightfully. These people made a lot of karma, and this is approximately the areas from where they were at, the Necropan being in the Upper Egypt, the Swernes being from India. Also, the night side weapons were talked about, and it was very much feared by the Atlanteans because there was nothing they could do. They had certain weapons that it would just, there was nothing, absolutely nothing they could do. He says, repulse was all they sought to effect, and successful over us in this, we had been left to go in peace. In other words, they stayed away from it because there was no way they could conquer the Swearnies or the Necropans because of their advanced work. Now, some of you may remember the whole story that was told that happened. It was about the Ray of Swearn, where he went and there were many men that were instantly put to death. He had actually asked that Zalem leave. And he talks about, oh my God, and passed on to the river. As they passed, I saw that their eyes were half closed and glazed in death. The movement of their limbs were mechanical. They walked as it hung on wires, and their armor clanked and clanged in a horrid mocking ring. As one by one the squads came to the river, they walked in deeper and deeper till the waters closed over their heads, and they were gone forever, gone to feed the crocodiles. In other words, it was about a group of men that an army that were more or less hypnotized, and just hypnotized by one sole person and taken right into the waters and then instantly killed. And this is why the Atlanteans were so afraid of dealing or even being around them, because of the enormous amount of attainment they had in this particular area, which was used wrongfully. Now, I want to tell you some more because the book talks a lot about the Swearnies, and Mother has also. So the story of the Swearnies actually goes back further to the time when Jesus was the emperor of the Golden Age, and 35,000 years ago. He stepped down as monarch of Atlantis because 80% of the people demanded it. It's hard to believe that, isn't it? The soul of Jesus, that 80% of the people demanded he step down. The 20%, which was about 2 million people who did support Jesus at that time, they left Atlantis with him and they traveled to Swearn. 1 million of them made their ascension from the land of Swearn. The other 1 million continued to embody, but most of them went astray and lost the tie to the Holy Christ self, and that was when they were on Atlantis. So the question was, where did the 1 million souls of Swearn embody? So it is believed, and it's been taught here, that the Swearni were given the opportunity to embody as the seed of Abraham to atone for the karma they had made, some of them by betraying Jesus during this golden age. So here we have what is known as the stiff-necked generation. These were actually the descendants from that evolution of the Swearnis. So there were 1 million of them, and some of them are still here, might be one of us, who knows. Moving on. Zalem had a great karma that he now had to deal with, and I'm going to talk to you about what this karma was, some of it, and we're going to go to his love life. So, in his private life, Zalem falls in love with the daughter of Prince Menex, whose name is Anzami. They have a deep love for another, and in Book 2, Phylos reveals that Anzami is his twin soul. We would also call it today the twin flame. But there's also another woman in Zalem's life, and her name is Lolix. She is attracted to Zalem because he is strong, courageous, and handsome. As it is the custom of her people for the woman to woo the men, Lolix courts Zalem. Zalem is flattered, but intends to marry Anzami. Attempting to dissuade Lolix, he lies, telling her that Atlantean law forbids marriage to those of alien birth on penalty of death. Lolix is unmoved by this and says, if the law forbid, it is all the same. None but ourselves need I know. So they keep it a secret. With this, Zalem succumbs. They carry on a secret love affair concurrently with Zalem's wooing of Anzami. In this chapter that we are studying, in this particular chapter, he says, my scheme is to domicile Lolix, and we're going to talk about that. Here's the picture right here. My scheme is to domicile Lolix in a palace on the far side of Kaifel from Menaxelon was successfully carried out without exciting the suspicion of anyone, not even arousing the jealousy of Lolix. Duplicity is what he says. So I find this particular scene in the book very interesting because he actually he calls it the mistake of his life, but he compares the two women. And he, of course, he loves them both. But his twin flame is Enzimi, whose picture you will see on the right. This is just, of course, a mock-up picture. We don't know what they really look like. We don't know what their Atlantean clothes look like. We did the best we could trying to come up with clothing and faces and what they may have looked at that particular time. But he is very divided between the attention of these two women and makes grave karma. Lolix goes on to have two babies. One of them, I believe one of them was aborted, and the other one, I don't know what happened, but they were both not allowed to live because she wanted to keep the arrangement secret. So we have our very sorrowful looking Zalem here. He says, the long atonement was before me. He says, but karma lay in wait for the evil of my life, demanded payment, and got it, every jot. No words paint the suffering of the expiation. Reincarnation, the ever recurrent prisoning of the soul in fleshly bodies, is but expiatory, but it is a penalty. So he goes on to talk about the reincarnation and what happened to him, which we're going to see in 10,000 years later, what happens to him. Along the way, an adept comes to him and gives him a prophecy and says, thou shalt work some good in the world, but alas, much evil also. And because of an overshadowing destiny, until thee shall come much sorrow. But unto thee it shall be a deep misery of anguish that shall come to you. So he goes on to explain this, and he says that he shall perish in a cavern. So he has this prophecy that was given to him. Now, this is a really important teaching about this prophecy. And so we're going to have the messenger tell us exactly what this means.
Implicit in this prophecy that is written is the then understanding of prophecy. This adept did not need to tell Zalem the story of God's justice and mercy and free will and the will of God. It was a given. And when things are a given and implicit to the understanding of a conversation and they are left unspoken, and then we go back and read the history of them, we don't have the complete picture. As in the situation of Jesus, when the disciples asked Jesus concerning a man born blind, who did sin, this man or his parents? Implicit in the conversation was that this man had a previous life because he was born blind. Reincarnation was understood. It did not have to be taught or reaffirmed or even included in the question by the disciples. Nor was it included in the answer by Jesus, who said, neither this man nor his parents did sin, but that the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God should be glorified. So this man was born blind so that Jesus could come along and heal him of his blindness, give glory to God, which probably was his karma, that he was required to give glory to God for not having given it to God before, and so that Jesus would publicly have this miracle. So these things that are implicit in the history of times that are not written down tend to distort our view of that history. And so you might have a distorted view of just what happened in that interchange. And the given is, unless you do so and so, unless you watch out, unless by this prophecy you, having been so warned, will see to it that you do not fall into this sin, this will come upon you. The weight of the probability of this sin, according to those laws of physics, mathematics, etc., was very great. And what this incident shows is that when you have good karma and your life stream is on a positive note, on the right-handed path, and you are serving God and his people to the best of your understanding, whatever may be the good karma of the past, you have the right to be contacted, and you will be contacted by a member of the Great White Brotherhood or someone who will point you in the direction where you can make a direct contact with the Great White Brotherhood, so that you may take advantage of that contact to deal with such a prophecy. The prophecy may not be given but we accept the prophecy, for we know we would not be an embodiment without karma and responsibilities that we need to take care of. And so Mark taught me that all people, and I'm not certain if he was speaking of all light bearers, or all mankind, or of whom, but he said that everyone has 3 opportunities in a lifetime to follow the path of the Great White Brotherhood. At 3 separate occasions, he will be approached in one manner or another, whereby he can make the choice to be connected with the true teachings of God, with the understanding of his laws, and the opportunity to actually become a chela of an ascended master. The other opportunity, which is always given, is that when you balance 51% of your karma, this is communicated to you. But beware of false spirits and foul spirits who will tell you that when you haven't balanced it, and therefore give you an illusion of attainment.
Okay, so moving on from there, he wanted to marry his twin flame, Zalem did, but he could not. And all was revealed to everyone about the affair. He left depressed, sad, and he ended up traveling. He went to some place to Umor, I have no idea where it is, to meet his destiny. And this is where he met his destiny. He went to find gold, and this is a picture from the book of his horse that drinks from the water of a generator. On the left-hand side, you will see American engineers created an atmosphere water generator producing unlimited drinking water. We just found this. Simone found this for me recently. So another invention that comes back from Atlantis. Okay, so then here we go about the prophecy. Remember the prophecy? Well, he's out looking for gold. He puts his horse right next to the cavern, and he says, "My curiosity was aroused, and I concluded to go to the end of the tunnel. For fully half a mile, I found the cave to be open before me. At that point, I stopped, overcome by surprise. In all that region, I had not seen a sign of human presence, recent or ancient until now. But before me, only partially were 2 heavy walls of basalt. I dropped my lumen to my surprise, and it broke on the rocky floor, extinguishing the light." So what happens is that he goes inside of the cave, and unfortunately, he tries to leave, but he tries to move the door, and he loses his balance and then strikes his head, and he goes unconscious. When he awakens, the door is shut, and he is securely locked inside the cavern. Zalem prays to Inkel, and his body begins to deteriorate because he had no water and no food. Now I'm going to summarize this really quickly for you here. So what happens to him, he's almost ready to make his transition, and here comes the false priest, the high priest that was a black magician. And this is Menem. He arrives and he mocks Zalem for his belief in Inkel. He expresses his deep hatred towards Ansami, as he says that he followed her inventions to wring her soul in agony, describing her as a powerful woman in Cirrus. Menem goes on to describe that he was really very old and used the night sight of nature to be in his body for 3 centuries. He then confesses he counteracted the good done of the Urnan of Swerin so that he died of a despairing heart. He again mocks Inkel. In his pride, he says, "Thinkest thou that I can have belief in a God? Bah! If God exists, I fear not, yet let him punish." Well, the punishment did come next, because the soul of Jesus the Christ, of course, that was not his name then, he was the Atlantean master, came at that particular time, and that's when the judgment descended upon Menem. And the soul of Jesus says, "I shall not, O Menem, enumerate thy crimes. Thou knowest them, everyone. Thou hast been fellow with the sons, and they taught they all they knew, and of me, and I know it's evil, yet interfere not, for thou art thine own master, even as all men are self-masters." So he goes on, and he says, "Get thee behind me, Menem utters a howl of mingled terror and defiance. At this dread sound, the Christ stretched forth his hand, and instantly Menem was surrounded with a glowing flame, which on disappearing revealed also the disappearance of the demon priest. He was cast out for a season into the outer darkness of devildom. At this time, we have now Zalem, who has made his transition, and he again is with, he calls him the cross bearer. His name was not Jesus, then it was the soul of Jesus. And he says, a glorious radiance broke out over the scene, and the cross bearer was beside us as we stood, clasping each other and our child. This is Lolix, and this is a picture from the book, Lolix and Zalem, holding their child. He whom I had seen by the moonlit fountain years ago stood by us again. On his breast shone a cross of fire, which leapt or fell again in waves of undulating light. So this is what Jesus says to him. Yet it shall not abide with thee until the day of the great peace entereth into thy overcoming heart. Therefore in a far day thou shalt garner a sorrowful harvest of woe, and repay all thou art indebted. That little one I will take unto me. Thou hast offended it, and it shall be a milestone on thy neck, casting thee in the sea of earthly woe, yet ye shall escape, for thou hast thy name in the book of life. So he's telling Zalem that his name is in the book of life, but he has a karma far into the future because of the offense that he did with that child. So time goes on. I'm going to go a little bit faster here so we can get done in time. He meets in another like 11,000, 12,000 years later, he meets Elizabeth. He is re-embodied as Walter Pearson. On the left, Phylos is in Venus, his twin flame, where I believe she may have ascended. Phylos gives him a vision over and over again of this ship, but he never knows what happens to the ship. His life is Walter Pearson, and he asks Elizabeth to marry him. Elizabeth is the reincarnation of Lolix. They have 2 children. He says in the book, it was a sad blow when my little daughters died of an epidemic scarlatina in the year 1878. Thereafter, I used my life to comfort the sweet woman whose vital breath nearly died in that cruel loss. He loved Lolix, and they had a good marriage together, but the karma was descending, and it even came even more as they went on a boat, and a terrible storm came upon them. And what happened was he tried to save her. Thereby, he was able to expiate his karma by saving her. And that was the end of that life. Then we have the fall of Atlantis. Why did Atlantis fall? It's explained to us by the messenger. So as we read the book, we realize that for ingratitude, it's ingratitude, Atlantis came to an end. And you can talk about everything else that happened on Atlantis, but it boils down to that one failure, the failure to give gratitude to God for all they had, and therefore to respect the gifts, to honor the gifts, to honor God. When you are grateful, the response in action is all of this. You carefully take care of a gift and you acknowledge the giver. And you have that sense, that ongoing sense of communion with your Lord, who has produced all of this magnificent civilization. So it was because of their materialism and their selfishness and their lack of gratitude that the beautiful island, the great continent of Atlantis, sunk for its final time. Here we read that why? Because they have brought back with them the Atlantean karma. She is talking now. This is the messenger talking about those of us who have reincarnated back today. Because they have brought back with them the Atlantean karma of materialism and the Atlantean dharma of the material or matter realization of the God flame. Yes, it is ours to produce all we have produced. Yes, it is ours to endow it with a flame and then to realize that flame and that attainment within. So those are the last words of that Mother gave about the civilization. So I'll just stop right here, and you have a couple minutes here. Any questions or any reflection on this incredibly wondrous story, but so intense?
This is intense, Valerie. That was great. Be grateful in all things, huh?
Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Questions people have for Valerie? Comments about the story?
I just want to say I'm grateful for it. It truly was wonderful. Thank you, Valerie.
And Heidi said it is wonderful also.
Gratitude is the key, huh?
Gratitude is the key.
Keep up the good work.
Hello, this is Charlene. I was just going to comment that I was in SU and when Mother taught that, and it was very profound. And I really appreciate all the graphics and all that you've done. I think it hopefully will really engage the younger generations.
Yes. Elizabeth said, loved it, want to see it. I agree. Those beautiful clips for cell phone were fabulous. Elena said, thank you, Valerie, and all who've made it possible.
Valerie, thank you. Thank you so much. The picture of
Thank you,
Phylos
God
is
bless you. Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias.
beautiful. So beautiful, the artwork.
Yes.
Can I say something, please?
Yes,
Isn't it interesting that all the astronauts that came back on Integrity, all they talked about was gratitude and joy? That's what they discovered when they were in space. It was all about gratitude and joy.
Yes, yes, that's a really great correlation. Absolutely.
A very big, I thought.
Yes. So I also wanted to promote on behalf of Carly Healy, she asked me to do this, the wonderful weekend seminar that's coming up in the Seattle area. It's actually in Federal Way, Washington. It's May 1st to the 3rd. It's Enter the Age of the Divine Mother. And it's a 3-day experience, beautiful, learning about, again, the Divine Mother and more, all of them together. So if you're interested, you can go to this website that's on here, ageofthedivinemother.com, and you can get all the information there.
I think it will be wonderful. The Age of the Divine Mother. We're having to recreate it right now. Very timely. But Valerie, these pictures were beautiful, and the clips for the phone were just magnificent, gorgeous.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
A lot of people expressing appreciation in the chat. But I can't see it. Linda, can you want to read some of them?
Yeah, sure. Marie Christine says, thank you very much, Valerie, for this wonderful, wait a minute, I just lost it. Oh, Valerie, for this wonderful presentation. Sheila says, very informative, Valerie. Beautiful illustrations they were. They were darling. Mary says, thank you, Valerie. This is so well done, very inspiring. Pamela says, thanks, Valerie. Clearer to me now since I was trying to make sense of the audio. I'm not sure what that means. Therese Liberton, thank you, Valerie. Lena, thank you for all your great work. Can't wait for the completion. Annie Bartholomew, thank you, Valerie. Elena, thank you, Valerie, and all who have made it possible. Heidi, I think this could be a way into the young light bearers. I agree. Elizabeth Claire, loved it, want to see it. Heidi Fuentes, the work is superb. Marie Christine, oh, the second baby was murdered and buried in the earth. I remember that part too. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Thank you, Valerie, so much. This was wonderful. I saw your other presentation. This is really even more superb than that one was.
Well, hopefully we'll get to those young light bearers out there, and they'll be sitting there on their cell phones, like all of the Phylos, and hopefully we'll have a great course for them with Mother's teachings for them as well. So pray for this, that we can move forward on it and find all of those out there that not only need to hear about Phylos, but really need to hear also about their own personal lives and how they can make their ascension. And America, they're the ones that are going to save America. They're the ones right around the corner. So we need to get to them. You remember that teary-eyed America that Fred Marcel talked about in the beginning. It was actually Phylos that said that. His concerns about America, weeping for America. So we need to save America.
I was
And
thinking,
Valerie, did you say
that
that people could order those workbooks and teach the course from them?
Yes, we're in the process of putting this into Dan Kehoe is working with us and putting it onto a small flash drive so it can be ordered through the bookstore, and then people can teach this. And it's quite extensive. It's 24 classes. It's quite long. It includes many of these clips in much greater extent by the messengers on these incredible teachings about Phylos in Atlantis.
So 24 episodes. How long is